The first question I have before I begin my presentation is, how many people will agree that philosophy and science are related? Except you. You are excluded. Shall Atif Bhai?
Science is a part of philosophy. That's philosophy. It's called science.
So actually, if you look at it, we get a bachelor's in science, we get a master's in science, and then what do we get? The highest degree in science is what? Philosophy of science.
PhD.
Doctoral philosophy in whatever subject. So the highest degree actually is about philosophy. So why I'm asking this question is, many people think philosophy and science are not related, but ultimately they are related. So anyway, so the topic of the presentation today is about knowledge. What is knowledge and how do we acquire knowledge? What's its relationship to reality? So the first thing here that I would like to explore with you is this topic. Can this link work? So this is basically a broad overview of what knowledge, how knowledge is, how we study knowledge. So the first thing is, we can study knowledge by its forms, various forms. We can study knowledge by its scope. There is a structure of knowledge, and now this is the taxonomy of knowledge will depend upon what is the objective of your study. So there are different ways you can classify knowledge. There is bodies of knowledge. These are different ways of recording knowledge. Then the topic of our discourse today is epistemology, the philosophy of knowledge. And I didn't include this one in my presentation today, but this is quite interesting to see how the model of knowledge is and the different relationship between data, information, knowledge and wisdom. Management of knowledge, this is called knowledge management, which is very important in IT. Obtaining, how do we obtain knowledge? That's the source of knowledge. How do we store knowledge? How do we retrieve knowledge? How do we communicate knowledge? And then we have the history of knowledge. And then we have knowledge and society. We have the politics of knowledge. The politics of knowledge is very important. That's how people are controlled in society. Sociology of knowledge, how the social structure affects knowledge and how knowledge affects social structure. Then we have the technology of knowledge, how do we actually write knowledge. There's knowledge of humanity and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go into this. As you can see, this is a vast thing. So we are concentrating on only the epistemology of knowledge. What are the sources of knowledge? How do we gain knowledge? That is the topic that we are going to discuss today. Now, this is how knowledge is related to our reality. We have four basic issues, problems that exist. One is the mind-body problem, the capital, that is money, debt, space-time, what is space-time, what is matter-energy. All these are related to knowledge, which gives us what is reality. That is the basic quest of mankind. Actually, there was another thing that I wanted to start with, but I forgot. So anyway, so let's look at epistemology. This is what we are going to concentrate on today. What is epistemology? Epistemology is the branch of philosophy concerned with the theory of knowledge. So, and is a very vast topic. So even that we will just talking about how knowledge is acquired, the source of knowledge. And this area is quite interesting. This is the demarcation, according to the philosopher, what distinguishes philosophy from science. But before we study epistemology, there is something that we need to understand, is what's meta knowledge and what's meta philosophy. So I'll give you an example. We are in this room right now, and we want to know, understand outside this room, what is the reality outside this room. But we can't go outside this room. So we will have we will invent methods and theories to tell us how many rooms are there in this building, the structure of the building, from within the inside the room,
Detection.
right? But what is the best way to understand the reality of this room and this building? Is to go outside this building and see it from the top. Then you can describe this room, right? This building better. So meta knowledge is basically talking about, or meta philosophy or metaphysics or anything called meta, is talking about going outside the box and then describing the box, right? So meta knowledge is the theory of how knowledge itself constitutes human beings, how we acquire this. Meta philosophy is the same thing. However, if you notice those things in the red text, they say it's very difficult to define, and philosophy cannot be defined. It's very interesting that philosophers can't define their subject. That should gives us a pause for thought. If a person in the subject can't define that subject, what does it mean? I'll just leave it as an open question. Then we have meta epistemology. This is about how we acquire knowledge, and here we have different approaches to epistemology itself. One is the traditional normative epistemology, and one is naturalized epistemology that began with this philosopher Quine in the 20th century. Some of the goals of meta epistemology are to identify inaccurate traditional assumption, overlooked scope, and it overlaps with biology. So epistemology is not just a mental thing anymore, it's a biological function of the organism. That's what meta epistemology is trying to come to conclusion to. Next is, so on this basis of that epistemology is no longer just a mental construct, is also a biological organic construct. You have evolutionary epistemology, where the thinking of Darwinian evolution and all these things are linked together with acquisition of knowledge, and that, but again, it's an open question whether that is really valid. If you see one of the biggest philosophers of psychologists, child psychologist Piaget, he dismissed evolutionary epistemology. Instead, he came up with what he called genetic epistemology, and he believed that it's a biological function that results from the actions of individuals through change. So he actually believes epistemology is a biological function. He doesn't believe it's a mental construct. You have another kind of epistemology. This is all we are talking about right now, is meta epistemology. We are not even talking about epistemology right now. So we have constructive epistemology, which according to them, the world is independent of human beings, but knowledge of the world is always human and social construction, which is difficult to understand, but I'll try to explain this a little bit. What they're saying is the sun, the moon, and these things exist, but how we draw conclusions about this is based on sociology and social factors and time-dependent factors. So in essence, it comes down to relativism, because as time change, we will have problems. Another branch of philosophy related to this meta epistemology is metaphysics, which tries to answer the questions of the origin and the meaning of the universe, and in essence ourselves, by reason alone, by thoughts alone. And here are some other meta things that we have, which I am not going to elaborate upon. I just listed them there so that we can know them. So let's go back to knowledge. So knowledge is what? We have sources of knowledge, types of knowledge, levels of knowledge, taxonomies of knowledge. But right now we are only going to talk about sources of knowledge. But before we start with that, we are going to talk about what is the structure of knowledge. How do we, in an empirical physical world, how do we acquire, what is the justification of knowledge? So there are basically two theories about knowledge. One is called foundationalism and one is called coherentism. What basically that means is they believe, a foundationalist will believe that knowledge is like a building and is divided into the upper part and a foundation. So that's why that's the word foundationalism. And the foundations constitute some basic facts, beliefs, which you have to believe in. Axioms, postulate, self-evident truth. We will come to that. And the upper floor or the structure is non-basic beliefs, which are justified by the foundations. So the first question that comes to mind, how do you believe that the foundations is correct? Right? On the other hand, the other theory of epistemology starts with, it talks about coherence. That instead of a building metaphor, you have a spider web metaphor where everything is spread out and they are interconnected to each other, right? And that's why you have, and they are all coherent, meaning they are linked to each other coherently.
Is it a conclusion base? Are we going towards that?
Sorry?
Like you know the information and then you drive your own, understanding of that. Is that the coherentism or no?
Yes and no, in the sense that yes, you eventually drive that, but they are talking about more fundamental. What is the fundamentals of how do you acquire knowledge? So they are saying knowledge is not some you will get, as we go along, you will understand what the difference is. So they basically coherent is they are denying that any basic beliefs. There's no basic beliefs. Everything is equal. I believe in this and I believe in that. They are equal. There's nothing basic. There's no foundation. It's just like like a spider web.
It's not a structure actually.
Sorry?
It's not a structure basically. It's opposite of the structure, right? As you explained.
As a building, yes. You know how a spider web is, right? It doesn't have a foundation, right?
Between two things is connected. Right?
It's just connected.
Yeah, it's connected in the air. That's
right?
Okay.
So now then the coherentism is divided into further subcategories depending on how they view different things. Now we go to sources of knowledge, and that's Fawad told me that we have to concentrate on a very small thing, and we have 1 hour, so I'm going to concentrate on sources of knowledge: perception, introspection, memory, reason, and testimony. These are the 5 sources of knowledge in a physical, mechanistic world. In Islam, we have one more, and that's Wahi. I'm just adding it, or in fact, not only in Islam, but in any religion, you have one additional source of knowledge, which is divine revelation.
No, but when you say testimony, it's basically you can't relate this testimony with this divine.
You can, but it is not.
It's not.
Testimony means another person telling me.
Okay.
But divine revelation means there is a transcendental being that has spoken to a person that communicates to me. Right? So what is perception? So perception is our 5 senses. That's what perception is. Perceptual experience is fallible. We all agree on that. A mirage is a classic example. If you believe in a mirage, you will die. Then there are two here from perception. This is what we come to empiricism. Empirical. Another word for perception is empirical. Empiricism. Now, empiricism is divided into two parts: direct realism and indirect realism. I'm not going to go into that, but just understand that there are two contradictory views on that. Introspection. Now, if you are a Buddhist and a Hindu, this translates into meditation. That's what they would call introspection. So, everybody knows what is introspection. You think your inner state that you verbalize, that's introspection, right? Now, what is the critique? These are the critiques of this thing. Sometimes you might confuse something for something else. That's very normal. So that's not a perfect source of knowledge.
Example is a pain.
Sorry?
Example is a pain in body. You don't know where it is.
Exactly.
Why it's come.
Next one is memory. Next is memory. Now we know what is memory. Memory is not just of a past event. That's what most people think. It's also of future events too. I will go to Shoaib's house. That's a memory in my mind. The American election will take place in 2020. That's also a part of my memory. So the past as well as the future is part of our memory. Most people think memory is of the past. That's not true. So memory is fallible, so we don't need to go into details on that. Memory can always fail us. Another source of knowledge is reason, and that's where we get rationalism from. If you make it a cardinal principle that reason alone is sufficient for you to have access to reality, then that's called rationalism. Now, in rationalism, there's a problem. There are two kinds of knowledge there. One is called a priori and one is called a posteriori knowledge. What is the difference between that? A priori knowledge is something that we have knowledge of before we experience it. Right? So, I know I was born. But I have no experience of that. No one has ever experienced being born. But we know that we are born. Right? I mean, if somebody denies that, that's a different question altogether. That's called a priori.
Or 2 + 2 = 4.
That's also again, but if you go to the socialist constructive view of reality, they will say that's not a priori. But yes, from the school of thought that I go to, I will believe it a priori. A posteriori is those knowledge that we experience. Like, for example, burning. We don't know what is burning till we actually get burnt. That's how we acquire that knowledge. So the problem that arises now is, there are many philosophers who will question that a priori knowledge exists. How does it come about? Let's say it exists. So how do we know it? How do we acquire it? Third, what is its extent? Can we really trust a priori knowledge to give us access about reality? And the fourth and the last one is the distinction between necessary and contingent truths. Leave that alone. That's philosophical. So I'm not going to go into that.
So learning from others' experience, where that would qualify.
That's posteriori.
No, learning from others' experience, not your own experience.
A posteriori.
Your own experience.
Yeah, a posteriori, because that person has experienced it.
Okay, so it's still classified.
Yes. Next is testimony. So in this testimony is nothing. The major difference between the testimony as a source of knowledge versus the other ones that we are talking about so far is that testimony is not, we don't have a cognitive facility for that. That is neither mental nor physical, right? So you tell me something is true or false, I have to process it, right, based on whether that person is, speaking the truth or is, like introspection is something within me, right? A priori, a posteriori knowledge is within me. I can make a judgment on that. But testimony is totally based on the credibility of what somebody has just told you, right?
Which is still not necessarily 100% true.
We are not even talking about justification now. We're just talking about a source of knowledge.
Yeah.
So depending on how truthful you find that person, you will accept the testimony, right or wrong. So there are two views about how testimony is accepted as a source of knowledge. We have the internalist view and then we have the externalist view. Anyway, so now let's go on to talk about one of the fundamental aspects of knowledge. We have to define things, right, before we can begin anything. If you look at it, the definitions can be classified into two large categories, intentional and extensional. You can see the definition there, but I am more focused on this part here, limitations of definition.
You made it full screen?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. We couldn't buy it.
Is it not full screen?
No, it is, but you need to go to the slide.
Oops. So limitations of knowledge. So first of all, let's talk about definitions. Definitions can either fall in these three categories here. Either they are infinite, regression, they are circular or recursive, or rely upon some primitive notion, which is undefinable. What does this mean? For example, I can say, what's a dog? You say it's an animal. What's an animal? And then we keep going and going and going, and there's never end. That's what infinite regression means. And you know that that's not possible. Let's look at the circularity. You go in circles. What's a unmarried man called? Bachelor. What's a bachelor? Unmarried man. And 90% of the definitions in the dictionary are circular. Take my word for it. 90% of them. You just have to check where they are going, what circle, how large that circle is. Then the last one is rely upon some primitive notions, and that's the main topic of this today's. Is ultimately we rely on some undefined concept, and we say, this is it. Beyond this, we cannot go. And that's what we will be talking about further down in the presentation. So there are many philosophers who have chosen, in fact most philosophers have chosen to leave some terms undefined. Either accept them or you don't accept them. They can't do anything about it. You know who Locke is, right? Locke is the godfather of American independence. Declaration of Independence, John Locke. What does he say? That simple concepts do not admit of any definition. So basically what he's saying is there are certain things they are not going to define. You just have to take his word for it, or your word for it, right?
But this could be in a context like there's so many things. How many are you going to define? Right?
Yes.
Why do you need to define everything?
That's very good. You actually just look at that last line. You just actually said that. Wittgenstein said you don't need to define everything. right? So you understand? You already said that. So Mill, you know who Mill is? He is the godfather of utilitarianism. Okay. So next is, so there are some fallacies of definition, which means when you are defining something, and if you are not careful, and these are the tricks that writers and journalists use. So if you are looking at an article, they will use one of these tricks to fool you. They will use a definition that is overly broad. Actually, politicians are the best case of use of this example. They will use definitions that are overly broad or generalized, too narrow, or mutually exclusive, or the fourth is the best one, and this is especially philosophers and philosophers of science use this trick: incomprehensible definitions. You use memes and jargons, medical jargon, which you say, oh, you have this, you have that. Then what? How can I rebut you once I don't even understand what you are talking about? Or actually in IT, in the office, they use this thing. They use 3-letter acronyms to just, like in a sentence, you use 4 3-letter acronyms to explain a question, and the guy is saying, whoa, this person knows too much. He can't ask you anymore. The PGP protocol is not compatible with the PHP, and as such, the Visual Basic is not going to work. You know it that I have said nothing, a nonsensical thing, because you know it. But a person who doesn't understand that, he will think I've just spoken something, brilliant. So this is the most common thing that happens, and the most common is using circular definition. I will give you an example. Steven Pinker is a big, very great, scientist from Montreal who's working in Harvard now on cognition and consciousness. So he wrote a book from I can't remember the title. It's basically, it means from animals to angels, or something like that. Basically saying that man was previously more wild, and now he has become more civilized, angel. Okay. So the thing that he has done throughout his book is very interesting. The definition of war. What is the definition of war? War, jung.
Fight.
Huh? Okay, you are using regressive. He's just defined one thing in terms of another without defining that. So he's regressive. Anybody else?
Basically, definitions are what we understand.
Who will come?
Actually, its whole knowledge is circular within the universe.
No.
Yes.
No.
Physical knowledge, whatever we define. Definitions are what we understand.
Very good. I like what you said. I like what you said.
Gay was used for happy.
Okay.
And now, if you say stand on the road and say word is,
you know why you are saying that?
Nobody will say that.
You know why you are saying that?
Say he's homosexual.
You know why you are saying that?
Yeah.
Do you know why you are saying that?
Why?
Because you are influenced by Islam. I'm telling you. I'm just telling you, and I'll complete that thought later on when I finish it. But right now I'm talking about Steven Pinker.
Okay.
So war. How will you define war? Conflict. So instead of fight, you're using conflict. How would you define war?
Again, everyone is telling you what
big
they
industry
understand.
to make money.
Okay.
Big money industry.
So now he has gone a tangent. So basically war, you define it in terms of either the way Shoaib Bhai and Hashim Bhai have defined, or you say it's not peace. You see, opposite of it, right? So what happens is people start
Then the question still stays. What is peace?
That's what I'm trying to say. So what happens is when a writer is writing, he's following a particular definition, and then in between he will switch over to a opposite definition.
But that's a writing technique.
That's the writing technique.
Not, if you are giving impression that it's a deception,
No,
I don't think so.
technique.
It's just the way he says that's how people will understand, because that's how.
No, that's wrong.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay,
now.
so
There is a
anyway.
number of definitions, fine. Let's go on.
So anyway, so now this is the main topic of the discussion today, is there are certain things that we have to start just by accepting it. As we understand, like Atif Bhaji said, we understand. So in epistemology, it is called self-evidence. Self-evidence is what? Is a proposition that is known to be true by understanding its meaning without proof and or by ordinary human reason.
But that's our axioms are, no?
Yes, I'm coming. This is in epistemology, or in everyday language, we call, in informal speech, we call it obvious. But the epistemological definition is more strict. An example is here: a finite whole is greater than or equal to any of its parts. You can see that this definition is by itself circular, and you just have to accept it, because you are defining the whole in terms of its parts and the parts in terms of the whole. It's a very circular definition.
The part of the table is the part of the big table. It's obvious.
All right. Another famous example in today's thing is the Declaration of the Independence of the United States. What does it say? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This is considered to be self-evident by the authors of the Declaration of Independence, but philosophically this proposition is debatable. So what is self-evidence to you and me might not be so to the other person. We just remember that. Next, in rhetoric, what is it? What do we call it? We call it truism. So in epistemology, what do we call it? Self-evidence. The same thing, same concept is called, in rhetoric, is called truism, which is self-evidence to be hardly worth mentioning, except as a reminder or as a rhetorical or literary device, and is the opposite of falsism, which is something so false that you don't have to talk about it. Right? Next, that's here yours. In mathematics, the same concept is called axiom. And what I would like you to see is, what is that? Oh, I missed it. Okay, so in logic, it is called primitive notion. And the quote that I really want to read out here is, to a non-mathematician, it often comes as a surprise that it is impossible to define explicitly all the terms which are used. This is not a superficial problem, but lies at the root of all knowledge. Atif bhai, it is necessary to begin somewhere, and to make progress, one must clearly state these elements and relations which are undefined, and those properties which are taken for granted. So what does it mean in mathematics? Mathematics means that there are undefined terms in mathematics, which you have to take for granted.
Mathematics starts with suppose, right? No,
not that suppose. We are not talking about that suppose. We are talking about, see the example here. Somebody asks you what is a point.
Okay.
You are not supposing a point. What's a point? What's a line? What's a set? What is congruence? What is between? What's incidence? You can't define those things. You have to accept that that person understands it.
For example, how you will define point or line?
I can't. When mathematicians have, how can I define it? I said this is a point. This is a point. I can show you a point. This is my point. That's all I can say. But how can I define it?
You just don't have words for something to explain something.
That is correct. Yes, that's what these things means.
So that means that this is explainable, but you don't have words for it.
Explainable in terms of what?
If you don't have words, then it's not explainable.
So then what do you mean by that? It's explainable. You don't have words.
So this is a point. I can show you. But tell, what is a point? I can't. I don't know. All I can say, this is a point. This is a line.
So there is a definition for line. A set of points
combined together,
or a shortest distance between 2 points.
That itself If you want me to go into philosophy of geometry, I can. But
Well, it means the words we use, if they are not defined, then how you will define something with the words? If words themselves are
So
not
what are you
defined.
trying to say? I mean, if its words are not defined or the things are not defined, what are you trying to
It's a
say?
belief.
What belief?
Belief that point is.
If Fazil bhai is saying this is point, then you have to
Say this
believe
is
that's
point.
it.
Let's agree. Let's move
You
on.
can go beyond that.
We're not going to argue on it. We say point is fine.
What
Let's
is-
go.
what
Move
are-
on.
This is what you're trying to say?
I think-
part of it,
yeah, I think so.
part of it, but that's not the complete
I
picture.
mean, this is what I
That-
understood.
that-
I would say.
But can he be wrong?
That's
No, but there's no point of
belief.
argument here.
what. Okay,
Can you be
let
wrong?
me.
I believe this is a point. Can you be wrong?
No, so what I am understanding out of this is that when somebody says this point and we all agree that this is a point,
That's
that
what you are
becomes-
defining.
That's how it becomes.
Without
point.
words, you are defining.
Yeah, and that's it.
We are
And
just
then everybody agrees.
empirically telling
Agreement
you.
of
Agreement.
We agree on. Okay, we will call it a point.
Somebody
That's
may
how the
come-
definitions are.
That's
Even word
no.
definitions are the same.
That see, what you guys are mixing two things. One is you accept something as a definition, as a rule.
Yeah.
ठीक? Like for example, we drive on the right hand side of the road here. There's no, somebody asks why, there's no why there. That's how we have
We
come-
agreed upon.
we agreed upon,
We
right?
call it a phone. Everyone knows what phone is,
Ex-
so we agreed upon.
Now the problem is, if that is the case, then there is no reality then. If that is the case, what happens is there's no reality. That means the reality is whatever we agree upon today, that is reality.
No, we have a problem in explaining the reality. Reality is there.
So-
It's just we cannot find the word.
Very good, very
Exactly
good,
defined.
very good,
Or maybe we don't have a comprehension to it.
very good. So that's
maybe there is no reality if you can explain.
see, all of this, all of the what we have said is all these philosophical positions are going to be taken from this particular aspect of what we are talking about. Either you say there's no reality, because reality is
Why
what.
are you bringing primitive notion in logic? I mean, what are you trying to say?
This is what I'm trying to say. You have to start from somewhere. Take something for granted. There must be something that you have to start with. You can't define. People
जैसे
think.
मफरूजा कहते हैं जिसे
हाँ?
उर्दू में जैसे मफरूजा कहते हैं
It has to-
क्या कहते हैं
ये
इसको?
मफरूजा कहते हैं assumption करके assumption करके हम चलते हैं
That's what I'm saying. That science is based on assumption. You assume something. Okay, what if this is the
So
case?
then, what is the justification of that assumption?
Listen. We don't have justification when we start thinking. We don't have justification.
Very good.
Okay,
You hear that, all of you?
Let me finish my sentence.
Okay.
So if I don't know anything, I say, for example, Earth revolves around the sun. It's my assumption. I don't know. I have not seen it. But now, what I will do, I will gather more information to make sure. Okay, after 6 months, does it come? Whatever other information I will get to
Okay.
prove my assumption.
Okay.
Then I will say it is true. It is reality.
Okay.
Because it's a human mind, we will say, okay, as you say, the consciousness might not, reality does not exist. Because what is reality? Whatever our consciousness experience. So what if our consciousness made a mistake somewhere, and maybe it doesn't revolve? It just seems us that it revolves, but actually it doesn't revolve. So that's why we will keep our surety will be 99%. That okay, 99.9% we are sure that it revolves because evidence shows us. Why I started gathering evidence? Because I assume. Now I can believe because I had evidence. So at the start you suppose, and after that you gather the information and evidence. On that base you believe.
Okay.
Your beliefs
The
are
thing
based
is,
on evidence.
maybe all the evidences we collected
That's
are
Wrong.
most of them are on beliefs. And
belief.
if you go in foundation,
Believe.
most of the evidences which we collected, if you go in foundation,
That exactly.
there are premises,
For-
there are axioms,
So
there are
Fawad bhai,
presumptions sitting
Okay,
there.
there are 3 axioms in the world. Not word. I mean, there are 3 axioms what they have been found.
In mathematics.
No, not mathematics. Generally in epistemology, what to call consciousness. You don't need justification for it because once you start thinking, it means you have a consciousness, right? And identity. One is Adnan is different, cup is different. Even you don't need justification. You know it's different. He is different.
By the appearance.
Whatever the reason, yeah, you understand. It's you don't need justification. That's the second. Third axiom is what is third axiom? Consciousness, identity, and Identity. I forgot the third one.
But even if the second one,
Reality?
you said that the identity,
Yeah.
for instance, like water
Yeah.
becomes ice.
Yeah.
Ice.
So
in
ice
snow.
has different identity. Water has different.
It's a
identity.
different identity.
So in your
Because-
mind, it becomes a two different things. Your consciousness told you that things have different identity. Well,
So okay. So let me finish this. And we'll come to your to your
we have a Wi-Fi here.
So-
We have a Wi-Fi here.
We have it, but I don't
Okay.
have
The
the
password.
password for
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
So in philosophy, the same concept is called premise. You start from somewhere, you assume something, and then you continue. And this is called deductive, reasoning. In linguistics, you have the same thing, which is called presupposition. There's examples here for that.
Existence. Third is existence. That everything exists. That's why, at the first place, you exist. That's why you are looking around or whatever. Something is exists. So three axioms. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So here, then we have in principles, we have a concept called principle in daily life, where we accept that to be true, regardless of whether we have a proof for it or not. And that's like, for example, principle of legality in the judicial law means that all laws need to be clear, assentable, and non-retrospective. That's a principle. It doesn't mean that someone bad can't. There are many times dictators will apply laws retrospectively, meaning they say the law is declared today, but is going to be applied 6 months prior. So you can do that, but that's not right. We know that. So the same thing in judicial law, we have presumption. In presumption is what? You are innocent until proven guilty, right? You are presumed to be innocent until proven guilty, right? Is there a proof for that? No. You accept it as true, right? You accept it, and then you either you prove the contradiction, the person is guilty, right?
I'm running out of time.
Okay. Next is, these are the list of presumptions in legal basis. In religion, the same concept is called dogma. We have creed in religion. Then we come to fact value distinction, whether we can actually make a distinction between a fact and a value. There's a difference between fact and value. A fact is something that exists. The sun exists, we all agree. But is the sun our God? That is putting a value on the sun. That is something different. We all agree on that. And that, how do you make that distinction between a fact and a value? Somebody can come and say, no, the sun is God, and that is a fact. But that's not a fact. What is a fact is that the sun exists. That's the reality. But a value, and I'm using the sun as an example, but that can apply to any other theories, abstract concepts, or physical concepts. A tree exists, but tree, is it my God? That is a value that I put. How do you make that distinction? There's always confusion on that part. Logical atomism is a theory that holds that there are some, just like matter is made of small electron protons, there are logical atoms on which the whole reality or our words of expressions are based, and this is where we are coming to. And this is very interesting, in which that Bernard Russell and Wittgenstein, they were the ones who actually started this program, and then they rejected it. So the person who started it rejected it, but the other people they are still pursuing it. So the founders, they left it, but there are still people around in the world who still believe in this theory, and they give you crap on this thing. The first question is, if the founders have rejected it, what's the basis of your claim any longer? Then there's the is out problem. is similar to the fact value problem.
Yeah.
Okay, something is
Yeah.
and something out to be. These are two different things,
Is and to be. Yeah.
right? Something is, okay, and what happens again, especially scientists today, Stephen Hawking, Richard Dawkins, to give you Steven Pinker, these are examples. They jump from an is to an out problem. They from a prescriptive, descriptive narration, they go into a normative judgment, which will baffle you. It is what is called leap of faith. Then we have conclusion is what? We have indefinables in all fields of knowledge that we have gone through. We have gone through all of them: language, mathematics, logic, science, everything. So indefinables do exist. You have to believe in them. The main thing is you have to believe it. Just like what Atif Bhai was saying. You believe in it, or you state it, and then you find evidence to support your statement, your belief, your statement, whatever you have accepted.
And if you don't find the evidence, you change it. You change your mind.
The big problem. You just did the is out problem. How do you will okay? I'll give you an example. Carl Sagan wrote it. Okay, listen to me carefully. Fawad Bhai comes to my house. I said, "Hi, Fawad Bhai. You know, in my bedroom there's a dragon who is living there. Do you want to see it?" Fawad says, "Dragon? Oh, I want to see you. There's a dragon." Fawad Bhai, I said, "Go ahead, open the door." He goes in. He doesn't see a dragon.
Invisible dragon.
I said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Fawad Bhai is invisible." Fawad Bhai thinks, how can I check whether Adnan Bhai is speaking the truth or not? Fawad Bhai says, "I have powder, talcum powder. I will spray it on the floor, and when he walks, I can see the footprint." Oh, Fawad Bhai, I forgot to tell you, he lives only in the air. He doesn't touch the ground. So every statement that Fawad Bhai is going to make,
He was actually giving example of religion, right?
no,
That he was-
no,
That's
not
why-
only the religion, no.
That's why-
Atif Bhai, he was talking about skepticism in religion and science.
Yeah.
Okay, so not only religion. So be careful. He said religion and science. He said don't. That's why he was talking about junk science and pathological science and voodoo science.
If you let me
Big-
finish. Okay, go ahead.
The reason why he's making that example, he's saying that if you take anything at face value, whether it's religious theory or scientific theory, at dogmatic value, then you will be led astray.
I agree totally. That's
So-
why he said extraordinary evidence required
That-
extraordinary what is
Evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That's fine, but that has nothing to do with skepticism.
Well, whatever it is, his point is he's giving the example. Any belief, any proposition
Correct.
is given,
Yes.
you have to prove it.
Yes.
Provide evidence. Whether anybody, whether religion, whether science, any
But
subject.
he's not doing something great, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already said that
What he said.
if you are going to make a claim, Allah ta'ala says, bring your proof.
Sure.
Allah ta'ala, see, the problem is this, that if Carl Sagan is saying it, everybody is repeating it. If you are making extraordinary claim, you bring extraordinary evidence, right? Right. Do you agree to this?
Yes.
Yes. So,
But it's not because of Carl Sagan. Before Carl Sagan, science was working on that principle.
no.
Every
Forget about that.
claim has a evidence.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, this is the book, and bring the evidence against it. Why do we always forget that?
Well, why you jump directly there?
I'm just
we are talking about terminologies.
Right. So I'm just giving you an example. That's all. So next one is, this is a slide about rationalism, logicism, and empiricism. These are three basically views that exist today on which all of modern knowledge is based.
Science.
Either there is reason, means reason, from reason we get rationalism, from logic we get logicism, and from empirical evidence we get empiricism. So my next few slides are about deconstructing logicism. What's logicism? Logicism is basically the school of thought in mathematics that all of reality can be explained by logical terms. Okay? He is saying, how much time do I have?
10 minutes.
Okay. So is logic empirical? That's the first question. There's a debate on that, whether logic can lead you to reality. Why? Because there are different types of logic that people are not aware of. There are many types of logic. There are two categories of logic are classic logic and non-classical logic. In classic logic, basically there are two values, true or false. In non-classical logics, there are many valued logic. So it can be true, it can be false, it can be maybe, it can be, in many ways you can define it. And the most interesting of all non-classical logic is para-consistent logic. So in fact, one of the philosophers of logic, Susan Haack, has divided non-classical logics into deviant, quasi-deviant and extended logics. Very interesting terminology. So I'm not going to go into all how these definitions are. I'm just going to jump to this one, dialectism. What dialectism is saying in logic, that's what para-consistent logic is based upon, is basically saying that there can be contradictory truths, which sounds very absurd. There can be no contradictory truths, but they are saying it can be. And in fact, it has been applied to artificial intelligence and all that. So there is some practical utility of that. But in reality, is saying, what is it saying? There can be true and false simultaneously. It is a belief that there can be true statements whose negation is also true. Such statements are called true contradictions or non-dualisms. And in fact, if you look at the Jain philosophy, Buddhist philosophies, they are dialectism. And these are some examples of dialectic logical statements. And inshallah, next time around we will talk about paradox, fallacies, contradictions and all that other stuff based on these assumptions, based on these beliefs, non-provable statements which you take and then you build your case. So it is not the reason why I'm talking about this is people are always like that example, that quotation that I was saying, people always believe that mathematics is very precise. It has all defined terms, right? This is the perception of people of mathematics, well defined terms, which nobody, true for today and true for all ages. But it is not true. Mathematics begins with undefined terms. It has issues, it has statements that cannot be provable, whether false or true.
Paradoxical.
No, I'm coming to that. There will be statements in mathematics that cannot be proven true or false. There can be statements in mathematics that are in fact paradoxical. That means a pathological condition in the assumptions that we just stated. Like I was talking to the doctors here, when a person goes to medical school, what's the basic sciences he's taught? He's taught anatomy, physiology and pathology, right? This is how the first year is started. Anatomy, physiology and pathology. So the question is, why are they taught pathology?
No, they don't take pathology. It's anatomy, physiology and biochemistry.
Yeah, but you know what basic sciences I'm talking about. So why is it like they're taught pathology? To recognize a condition that exists which is abnormal to the normal condition. When we are studying epistemology, we only talk about normal conditions based on those things that we just talked about. But these things will lead to some pathological conditions, and which are called paradox. They are not called pathology because that's not medicine, right? It's called paradox. And paradox, if you study paradoxes, that is when you understand what are the limitations of these assumptions that we are talking about. In mathematics, you can actually prove the P paradox, Atif bhai. You can actually prove that a small ball, or let's talk about the Earth as a sphere. You can actually deconstruct the Earth point by point and make two Earth that are equal to the previous one. So that basically you have proved
Double the earth.
double the Earth. Basically, you have proven 1 minus 1 is still 2. Not even 1. 1 minus 1 is 2. So that is a paradox.
Mathematics, yeah.
So that,
Mathematics is mathematics.
so let me just conclude with this. The reason why we brought this up is to point out that modern knowledge is based on certain assumptions, certain statements. I shouldn't even say assumptions. Let me scratch that. Modern knowledge is based on certain statements that you have to take for granted. You have to accept that, and then your knowledge, your knowledge is built upon that. It is. People are always surprised when we make that statement. They think only religion is form of religious statements are statements that are to be taken for granted. That is not true, right? Religious statements, of course, they are based on certain things that we have to start with, no doubt about that. We all agree on that. But that is also true for any other knowledge. So why is it that only religious texts are being what word should I use? Criticism.
Because of lack of evidence. That's the
What do you mean by lack of evidence?
Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about lack of evidence. What is lack of evidence?
What is lack of evidence?
Yes.
Anything, as I told you, example.
I
Give you example.
Give me.
That any scientific knowledge,
Mhm.
which based on assumption,
Mhm.
religious knowledge stops after that. That this is my baseline, I have to stick with that. Now, scientific knowledge based on any assumptions have to gather the evidence to prove that assumption.
Okay.
If that, let me finish. If that evidence is lacking or going against that assumption, you take and throw out that assumption.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Okay. Give me. No, excuse me. Just 1 minute. Be very precise. You start with something. I'm going to repeat what you're saying. You are going to start with a statement.
Assumption.
You call it assumption.
Okay.
I'm just going to call it a statement.
Statement, what we assume. Yeah.
We will start with a statement, undefined statement.
What do you mean undefined?
Assumption is undefined. You haven't defined it in.
Okay, go ahead.
You start with an undefined assumption, undefined statement. Sorry, and then you build a case. And when you build a case, you find certain things that is wrong. Then you say that undefined. You don't accept that undefined assumption. You agree?
My assumption is wrong. Yeah.
You agree? Then half of mathematics should be thrown out.
Okay.
Why?
Or-
Well, hold on.
Or it has been
Why?
thrown off a lot. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If that is the case, what is a set? No. What is a set? What is a set?
I don't know what is a set. I
Exactly.
don't know the definition. Set.
There's no definition, Atif bhai. You can go and search it.
Set.
What is the point?
One category, group of one category. I don't know. I can simplify. I don't know exactly that exact term now.
Bernard Russell spent 250 pages trying to prove that, and then he said sorry.
I mean, see.
Okay, what is the point? Okay, geometry. Throw geometry out. What's the point?
Okay.
What's the point?
Let me speak.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, I don't know what is the point. We already discussed that, right? You told that what is the definition of it. I'm saying one thing, that all the science or philosophy even required evidence. In philosophy is just a general term, like gathering knowledge. How do we get knowledge? Like you told, epistemology, there is ontology, what things to study. There is one branch is what do you call science is one branch of philosophy. Methodological naturalism.
Empirical study of philosophy is called science. Okay.
Yeah, methodological naturalism and physiological naturalism, and then in physiological you have epistemology, whatever cases. I'm saying the procedure for these things, some non-scientific, non-empirical knowledge does not have to be material evidence. You don't need to gather that, But for scientific knowledge, you need to get, because it's a study of nature. So nature exists, you have to gather evidence of your assumption.
No, I'm lost. I'm lost what you're trying to say.
I'm saying science is based on assumption, but that's the first step. After that, you have to get the evidence to support that assumption. That's why many previous theory which believed to be true has been thrown out. Tell me one thing in religion which have been thrown out or gathered evidence to be true or tested.
The thing is,
None.
Well, okay,
Because it's a different field.
Based on testimony.
Exactly.
No.
That's why those are
No.
without evidence, and these are
No.
evidence.
If you're talking about there are no evidence, then it's a different
No,
story.
but the
What's
whole,
the
if you're comparing
this
it,
discussion is that we have to take it for belief.
Of course.
We have to take it without any evidence. We
Well,
just
that
have
first
to
point-
take it.
well,
The thing
first
is-
point, it is
That's
like
the whole-
that, right?
I'm-
You just said that. No, you said that. You said that. You assumed this to be true, and then you gathered the evidence.
Both
Yes.
both sides, there are assumptions.
They
Very
start with it.
fundamental, foundational assumptions. Later
That's
there
right.
are evidences.
Yeah.
Both are different fields,
Okay.
and both have evidences. For example, Quran, let me
Okay.
provide you an evidence.
No,
Quran
let's
claim,
not go into that. We
there
are
are
talking about
evidences.
terminologies right now, okay? Specifically going to Quran, here is a Christian person sitting, then
Yeah,
you
sure,
have a
he
fight,
can-
right?
no,
Okay.
no fight. No
I
fight.
mean, he will
The
say,
discussion.
I have a fight, I mean, discussion.
Argument, yeah.
Argument between.
No. 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 So, Atif bhai, you're moving towards a different thing.
Discussion,
I'm
they're
talking-
not
No.
everywhere.
No.
Listen to me. अभी जो इस वक्त डिस्कशन हो रही है बेसिकली वो अब किसी एक चीज को तो सब्जेक्ट करना पड़ेगा ना कुरान का वर्ड इसलिए यूज कर रहे हैं कि दिस इज बीन नेगेटेड बाय द साइंस ना इसीलिए
No. That's not what I mean. No. Atif bhai.
All
Hold
I'm
on.
saying is there are two different ways of gathering knowledge.
What is that two different
That's
ways?
it.
What's two different ways?
Not two exactly. What is one empiricism? Scientific study. How you get the like study of nature, physiological naturalism. That's one way. And whatever the belief system is non-evidential, religion falls
But
into
that-
that. Why?
No,
Let me finish my
आपकी
sentence.
आपकी समझ आप समझ नहीं रहे ना अब
मैं
रिलीजन
सिर्फ define कर रहा हूँ.
देखिए रिलीजन का आप
I'm-
समझ नहीं रहे
No.
I'm just defining it.
आप
how
एक
can you define
नहीं.
what authority
If I will finish
No.
the sentence, then only I will be
No.
able to define. See, these are two different ways of thinking. Now, you agree that scientific method is not the religious method.
wrong, and that's why I disagree with you.
Okay, they both are same.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying, first hear what I'm saying, then you are
I had the
no. First of all, you are saying there are two ways of acquiring knowledge, right?
not two ways.
Okay.
I misspoke. I
Okay.
take back. There might be many. I'm talking about distinguish it only. My focus is only on science. So
Okay.
now that there is a one way of gathering knowledge. For example, if a Buddhist way of gathering knowledge is totally different than science.
Okay.
You don't put something into
Okay,
that
so let's
and
let's
Okay,
focus
go
on
ahead.
this thing.
Go ahead.
Yes, there are two. You are saying there's a scientific way of gathering knowledge. Yes.
there is a methodology, scientific methodology to learn.
Okay, scientific methodology.
Yeah,
Let's
we have-
use your term.
Like last time you in a lecture you mentioned the scientific method.
Is there a scientific method?
Sorry?
Is there a scientific method?
Yes, there is a scientific method. Put in your computer and you will get it. Hey, you make you study in your first chapters of science, chemistry, physics, whatever. Hypothesis, they build assumption, hypothesis. You gather data and then you make conclusions. That's a scientific method.
Atif bhai,
But
this myth. No.
Whether
If
it's
you are going to
true.
talk this way, then I can't answer that question. Honestly.
No,
You know why? Because the myth of the scientific method is a well established.
I'm saying,
no. Hear me out. There is no scientific method.
Maybe we will agree. I'm saying whether it's right or wrong, but they have a defined way of doing it. Like, for example, test, collecting data, testing it, and repeating the test. That's scientific because it's a matter of knowledge, matter of.
इस्लाम में ये चीजें इम्प्लीमेंट कब से हैं? आपको पता है? नहीं पता ना आपको, यही मैं